let's go forward to the present. And you and I both live in and around Detroit, and probably with very different eyes, but we both see the degree of racial separation, the inequalities that continue to be so present in our local society. Mm-hmm. So in that context, I guess I'd like to ask you what you think about where we're going, what are the forms of progress and struggle that are possible today that can lead to a better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. It does look rather bleak, doesn't it? But, when you sort of look at what the media presents and everything. But I know that there are cells of activism, alive and busy in so many different arenas of life in Detroit, and I have to assume that similar things are happening in other metropolitan centers. The whole movement for urban gardening, for example, mm-hmm. and for food production within the city. The interest in environmental concerns and the ways in which we have to take responsibility for our brownfields and for the blight that exists in our communities. The natural health groups, people who are having weekly forums about how you can be involved in self-healing and nutrition and all of these things. So they're sort of just under the radar, but mm-hmm. they're there and they're working hard. And that's where I look to see, the hope mm-hmm. of change in our society.
So kind of community-based
Community-based, community-based grassroots activism. Mm-hmm. I look at the independent schools. I spoke a little bit about that before, the fact that they are there and they provide models for others who want to do something about the way our public school system has eroded and how it fails to serve our children. Whether they want to go into the public school system to be activists and volunteers to make a change, or whether they want to begin to set up freedom schools mm-hmm. and offer children, alternative ways mm-hmm. To be educated and to be involved in education. So I don't despair. I do see, maybe because I'm in touch with those people who are doing those things, I do know that change agents are at work in our community, mm-hmm. and eventually those efforts will surface and more people will become involved in them. I feel certain about that because, conditions of poverty are affecting more and more members of any given community. It used to be that poverty could be sort of shunned aside, but now when you have working people, working middle-class people, who are frightened about their future, and am I going to be able to feed my children? Used to be, will I be able to send my children to college? Now it's, am I going to be able to feed my children, provide for my family, get back and forth to work? So, because the economy is in such bad condition, because corporate leadership has shown absolutely no allegiance to any sort of national concerns, right, and is off into its globalization, we will see more and more people active on these issues of survival, mm-hmm. food, healthcare, mm-hmm. shelter.
Actually, one part of what you just said is particularly intriguing to me, promising to me, and that mm-hmm. is, you mentioned the urban gardens, mm-hmm. for example. Mm-hmm. The idea that kind of came to my mind as you were talking was that smaller communities, and I'm in the city of Detroit, for example, maybe a vision for the future is one in which communities are actually able to create their own kind of social self-defense.
Mm-hmm. I think they will have to. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of survival. Mm-hmm. If you drive through Detroit, you see all of the areas that have been sort of let go. Detroit has developed, I call it the T plan, or the capital I plan, along Grand Boulevard and then down the corridor of the cultural center to the waterfront. Everything's looking very nice, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole gentrification effort is in effect. and more young upper middle class professionals are being drawn into the city. But if you go beyond that corridor, you'll see that there's just sort of abandoned space and neighborhoods left to manage however they can. So I think, yes, people will come up with survival strategies, and one of them is the urban gardening movement. How will we feed ourselves? There are no grocery stores,
Right.
in Detroit at this point.
Right.
If you want to get fresh produce, you've got to drive into one of the neighboring suburbs.
Right.
So these are just absolute essential strategies that people are going to be pulled into, whether they think of themselves as activists or not.
Mm-hmm. It's good to have some idea of a mechanism that could be a brighter future. So I'm glad to hear you articulate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see, the government, unless we're lucky enough to elect Barack Obama or someone who has been in this place where most people are and understands what needs people have. I don't see the government making changes that will help people have a quality of life just because the government recognizes that. I think people will have to demand.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to a place of making demands overnight. You have to work at things for a while and understand, oh, well, we've done this and we've done that. Now, what else is there to do?
Mm-hmm.
You begin to escalate pressure, on the basis of your understanding and your direct experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be a while, but we're going to see that. Wouldn't it be wonderful, though, if Barack does get elected? And can actually begin to implement changes from the top down that could help people who are involved in this way at the grassroots level. That would be wonderful.